Hi, my name's Anna Sarin. I'm Director of Listings Development with the Canadian Securities Exchange, and you're joining us here at PDAC 2026 at the CSE Podcast Hub. I'm joined by Tim Gallagher with Royalties Inc, a CSE listed issuer. Thank you for joining me, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Very well.
Good.
Very well.
Good. Okay, listen, before we talk about what's going on with Royalties Inc,
Mhm.
I thought it would be important or prudent to talk about what a royalties-focused company is.
Well, curiously, it's not an industry category, which
Okay.
is something that nobody really thinks about. It's actually an investment company. So when it comes down to, in the Canadian exchange, you probably have upwards of 50 or 60 royalties companies. So getting a percentage of the revenue, generally speaking, on whatever the underlying
On a
business is.
variety of properties, right? Or
Yeah, it could be
projects.
mining, could
Yep.
be oil and gas, could be, you could think about the restaurant royalties, your Boston Pizza example,
Right.
business royalties. So it's just being in the business of owning a percentage of the revenues of a company that's actually an operating company.
So it's kind of a unique opportunity for an investor because they get to participate in multiple projects, right?
Right.
Amazing.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about Royalties Inc. What have you been working on? What project are you guys focused on right now mostly?
Well, as you may or may not know, we have three investments. One is the legacy silver property in Mexico,
Right.
which has obviously come to life with silver tripling over the last year.
Yes.
We have our lawsuit against Capstone for the royalty we bought back in 2019. We had a lot of success in 25. We won the lawsuit in June. They appealed. We won the appeal in November. Then they filed, which is the final step in the Mexican process, something called an amparo. And that we just got notification that the federal prosecutor recommended denying the amparo, which is the final step in the process,
Okay.
which would lead to what they called execution. For us, that means working towards settlement and collecting on the royalties they should have been paying since 2019, as well as the value of the royalty going forward. In our minds, it's huge. And going back to your original point about mining royalties and what the generic view of it that makes it so exciting is, yeah, it's really just a portfolio, highly
Income.
diversified, pure cash flow, and these things have arrived at a place where they trade at a 1% dividend yield. So every $1 million in cash flow that you could pay out to your shareholders is worth 100 million market cap, which
Amazing.
is staggering, right?
That's amazing. And has the current commodity prices and what we've been seeing in the resource sector been helpful to Royalties Inc. and kind of the business model?
Yeah, I think like most people in this space, compliments obviously of gold and silver in particular, let alone copper. Most stocks have tripled over the course of the years, and so we've been, I guess, started last year at sort of 2 cents, 3 cents. We got as high as 14 cents.
Yeah.
So it's been a big beneficiary as people have come back to the market. But when it comes down to it, the silver price tripled, and our underlying silver property was based on $30 silver going back to 2014. So the margin increase for all businesses, let alone the ones that are in production, is obviously massive.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking about this actually, that for example, Wheaton Precious Metals, that's what most people understand when it comes to royalties companies, is there's not many that are in the growth stage that you see typically that are royalties focused, right?
Well, as investment companies, asset management companies, all of the companies that are in the business are in acquisition mode all the time. They're
Right.
always, that's the whole purpose of the team. It's as an asset management team, they're looking at new deals to acquire.
Right.
I mean, the curiosity in the mining space is because there's so few actual cash flowing royalties. I estimate that with over $200 billion worth of market cap, there's only 600 actual cash flows.
Isn't that wild?
So, Franco's been at it for 40 years. They
Yeah.
only have 100 cash flows.
Yeah.
So it's, having one is huge. So you'll see these new players show up with one or two, and they'll rifle from literally a shell to 200-300 million market cap. That makes it fun, but it also makes it curiously misunderstood, right?
Sure.
Meaning people don't understand royalties as part of your portfolio.
Yep.
A de-risk part. And in essence, it's 100% margin business,
Yep.
right? Because there's no cost other than the 2 or 3 people, maybe 5, maybe 10, on the payroll. So
I would imagine under this business model, your management team is probably the most important component to the structure of the company, right?
well, at the end of the day, it is the key ingredient. If you go back to Franco Nevada and Simon
Yeah.
Schulach and
Yeah.
Pierre Lasson,
Yeah, absolutely.
driving at the beginning. Now you've got Randy really becoming the new thought leader on the space with Wheaton and Surpassed. I think they're they're pushing 100 billion market cap.
It's unbelievable. It's
And all these
amazing.
companies, by the way, started off as shells.
Yeah,
Like literally as shells.
yeah,
So, for them to grow to these sort of hundreds of millions of market cap, let alone billions, is the reason why you want to have some allocation
Yeah.
to it, right?
I love it. Well, it's a great opportunity. Anything that we should pay attention to for in 2026 for Royalties Inc?
Well, right now we're trying to update our PEA
Okay.
with SLR Consulting. So, put the current prices into the
Yeah.
assumptions, and zinc's up 50% from when it was done back in 2014, and of course silver's more than tripled. So that makes a big difference going from essentially a written off asset to
Yeah.
something that you could say is $1 billion in the ground. What's the NPV? That's what we gotta
Okay.
listen for. But if you plug in numbers that are much higher, like a lot of people think, $200, $300 silver, which is not unreasonable in our estimation, and then finally resolving the lawsuit with Capstone would be another major milestone.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So if we do a little financing now, we can get back to drilling the high grade on Bilbao, and that's sort of in the cards for the next
Amazing.
few months.
And Bilbao is the project in Mexico, right?
And, yeah, Zacatecas, Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, listen, Tim, it's always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.